Good afternoon again. Gosh, the days fly. Okay. I'm sitting in front of an SSA 821 form. And I thought it might be helpful to explain to some people who don't know what it is. But they might receive one from the SSA field office. It's not going to be from the adjudicator. And this happens generally when you filled out your application and you posted a date that you said you couldn't work after. But then other information suggests that you did work after that date in some way, shape, or form. The SSA needs to know how much you worked after the date you said you were unable to work or disabled, because they're going to see if that work constituted SGA. And if so, your alleged date of work stoppage or disability start would not be right, and they'd have to move it into the future. It might also be that if you give a date of when you stopped working and on the application, then they say, did you change your duties in any way before you stopped working, before the date you just gave? And if you say yes, such as you had reduced hours or whatever, then they'll ask you, well, did you earn over, they'll say some version of SGA. They give you one number though, but there's multiple years in there. So it's kind of a weird question. But it might be that the date that you put down as being the start of disability, it might actually have been earlier because you were actually not working SGA earlier than that. And I believe the SSA is supposed to pick an applicable date as they see it, even if it's earlier than what you said, because you didn't know the definitions of work and SGA and all that. So anyway, so you've got the SSA 821-BK. That's for W-2 employees. So if you are working after a particular date, and they usually put the date on that first page, they're going to ask you who you worked for, how much you made. They're going to want your pay stubs. Or if you have a W-2, let's say it's an entire year, there's an entire year that's already come fully around, and you have a W-2, because that's how much time has been since the date you allege, and this is the work you've done after on a part-time basis. We usually send W-2s showing that the work for that whole year all combined was less than SGA. You can do pay stubs. I really suggest everybody always keep their pay stubs. People tend not to. A lot of employers will have it where you can get it right online. And that's really good and can be useful later if you have to prove how many hours you did or didn't work, which part of the pay might not have been from work hours. It might have been vacation or something. But anyway, so on the 821, you are going to be putting down those employers. You'll see that on number, let me see if I can get this up here better. They do ask you if you've received any other money, but you're saying it's not from work. You're supposed to describe what it was. So that this is because if they get IRS documentation that says income to you of $20,000 in 2021, you claim to be disabled in 2021, they're going to assume kind of that was work and it was over SGA. So they're going to say you couldn't have been disabled when you claimed you were. But if that turns out that pay was something else, it could have been stock option, it could have been back pay from a different work period, holiday pay, vacation pay. That's also the form where you're going to put that down where they ask for it. They also go on to ask about, let me just see if I can get to it. There are times when even if you are over SGA in those part-time jobs that you had, that might still be in a disability period if you have the right answers. If you had expenses that could be subtracted from the pay you got under the rules of the SSA to bring you under SGA if you were slightly over. If you had, and this is where they're asking all these things, this is number 5 on page 6. If you had extra help, you had to have an aide assist you to get your job done. That can also be included here, because then that might be considered not substantial work, even though it was gainful. Maybe it would be sheltered work. So there's a bunch of nuances to this form, but this is generally going to occur if you worked after your alleged onset date. And a lot of people do. They drop down to very part-time because of disabling conditions, but they keep working a little bit. And here you need to show, the goal is, from a claimant's perspective, is to show that it was not SGA, and it would not bar you from being disabled when you said you were. Okay. There is a kind of a sister form called SSA 820, and that's similar. And it's for those that are self-employed that do not have W-2s or an employer, but work for themselves. So you're going to want to, if you were self-employed, you might have to be, and you indicated that you were still working, or they saw that you filed it, your tax return says something to the contrary. That will be a form you'll probably have to fill out. That can be really important for the self-employed, in particular, those work impairment related work expenses that can bring down SGA. Also, sometimes people who are self-employed, let's say they get a 1099 from a client or whatever, or some, like if they're doing Lyft or Uber, they get a 1099, and that's the gross revenue that they made. That's not their net income after business expenses, that the costs are subtracted that allowed them to make that money, such as mileage or gasoline or car insurance or whatever it is that would be a normal business write-off. Sometimes people don't do all that with the Schedule C like they can to reduce their income that they're taxed on. And if so, if that makes them be over SGA for the months they claim to be disabled, adding some of those things in here, putting in those expenses. And that could also include co-pays for specialists that you need to see for your disabilities that then allow you to continue working at least part-time. It can include just other expenses. So you want to make sure that you keep track. If you are working at any time after you claimed to be disabled, you're going to want to keep all of your receipts for expenses that would be write-offable, even if you don't write them off for tax purposes, to show the SSA for the purpose of SGA determinations that you are not SGA. Because when you subtract that $250 a month for your cell phone and your home office, it brings you under SGA for all those months. Just things to think about and to keep. I always say keep that box and keep everything relevant in there so that if and when you need it, it'll be there. Okay, all those documents. All right, SSA 820 and SSA 821 for those that continued working a little bit after they were considered themselves medically disabled. They will find out. And it'll, oftentimes it works in your favor if you kept all your documents and you indeed could be disabled while you were still earning income. And that's a wonderful thing because that gives you more back benefits. Okay, ciao for now. Bye.